All right. So on Friday, we released our leadership episode, right? And
Yes.
that
Yeah.
was Who Made You King, right? And we talked about different kinds of leadership and what makes a great leader, both in the animal kingdom and the human kingdom. Now,
Hmm.
Brian and I were discussing this before, and we think that given the events that are unfolding in Ukraine, it would be a good time to talk about a real leader.
Leadership, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
a real
What we're
leader.
seeing. Right.
And some of those things that we talked about, I mean, call us, spot on, but they're kind of coming to life right before our
Hmm.
eyes.
Yeah. I mean, you see how Zelensky is actually, you know, leading his the Ukraine. It's amazing to watch that.
Now, I mean, we talked about this earlier, but President Zelensky was not he was not a politician, right? And
No.
so I want to talk about that for a second because
Mhm.
we asked the question when we were putting together that episode, like, do you have to be trained for certain things? Is that
Mhm.
something that's just in you, right? I mean,
Mhm.
he was an actor, right?
Right.
So if you look at someone who's just he's an actor, he was
Mhm.
a comedic actor, and now he's over there leading on the front lines, like,
Right.
he's out
Well,
there,
right.
I mean, he's
Well,
out there.
it's not the first time we've seen an actor as president of a country. I mean, Ronald
Mm,
Reagan is a prime
right.
example, but Ronald Reagan had a little more political experience than, President Zelensky. So,
But the point is it's hard, right? I mean, we
yeah,
talked about that. You can't
absolutely.
train for that. You can't
No.
make that. You can't buy that. That's just in you, right? And
Mhm.
so he's a natural born leader, and that's what I would
Abs
consider a natural born leader.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look, I mean, he is willing to sacrifice just like he's asking his people to sacrifice. And I think
Right.
that's one of the, most amazing things because you don't often see that in leaders.
I
The
mean,
last
can you
sacrifices.
picture any of our presidents, I'm sorry, any of them out there on the front lines, like, in his fatigues? I'm sorry,
No,
no.
no, well, not any. I mean, we've had presidents like that, right? We've had
Maybe
presidents that have.
George Washington was
No,
out
no,
there,
well, I
right?
mean, no, Teddy Roosevelt, and
All
you
right,
have
fair
you
enough,
have,
fair enough.
who is it? The other I forgot who it was, that was the military leader. So you've had some that come out of a military background. So, yes, we've had quite a few that have, but yeah, absolutely. But this guy doesn't come out of a military
Mhm.
background either, you
Nope,
know? So
nope,
he's just someone who believes so much in his cause.
yeah.
He's willing to, put his life on the line for it.
And this is really what leadership is, and that was what we talked about, do as I say, not as I do kind of
Right.
thing. You know,
Yeah.
what you a good leader is someone who's not going to ask you to do something that they wouldn't do themselves, and we talked about that
Exactly.
on the episode.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's happening. That's happening.
Mhm.
I mean, quite frankly, I'd like to go and have this man lead me. I mean,
Yeah. Well, did
I
you see
mean,
well, I was watching. I mean, there are people because, they were sort of calling on everyone around the world for help. There are people that are actually leaving the countries they live in. I was watching this video this morning of a guy from I think he was from the UK. He was leaving, the UK, flying to Poland in order to go help,
I mean, if you
as
can
an
now
individual.
rally, we talked
Yeah.
about rallying, right? People behind you for a cause. I mean, look, yes, the cause almost speaks for itself, right? But
Mhm.
if you have a leader who's not, let's just say, for instance, when the US offered him, a ride out of there, right? He would have taken it. Do you think his people would be as willing to fight if
Yeah.
he's like, I'm done, right? And we saw that in Afghanistan, I mean, over the summer, I think we saw the same thing.
Mhm.
If you're not willing to, right? What's his name? I'm sorry, I'm not politically up to, date on all of my world leaders, but whoever he was, he left, right? He left, he fled. And nobody was willing to put their lives on the line for
Mhm.
that. And so they didn't. But
Well, I mean, if you sort of look at what's going on, right? It's no different than like what the United States went through at the beginning of its democracy, right? They were trying to, they were trying to break away, and he's basically saying, no, we're going to stay, as a sovereign nation, we're going to stay as, a democracy, and he's sitting there, upholding that, right?
Mhm.
He's fighting for that because he believes in it,
Right.
and his people do. I mean, you see, like, the people are behind. so many people are behind him.
So
100%. They're like, okay, yep. What do we need to do?
right? The Ukraine and well, I read it this morning, the Ukrainian, beauty queen, she's out there. I mean, and there's so much, look, we
Well,
don't know
did
what's
you see the
what's
photo
real
of
and
the?
what's fake.
Yes,
Let's
I
just
know.
be realistic,
Yes,
okay? We're
because
not
half the footage I've seen is like
right.
old footage.
Yeah.
It's not even like new footage. I'm like, that is, definitely not, filmed recently, right?
But you wanna know what President Zelensky is doing to almost combat that? I mean, he's out there on Twitter taking selfie
Yeah.
videos, right? I
Mhm.
mean, this is what's real, right? I mean, that's a real guy,
Yeah.
and a relatable guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting you bring up Twitter, right? And he should be on Twitter. But last time I checked, and I didn't check before the weekend, Putin was still on Twitter, which is interesting that they didn't take his account down.
They are now flagging any Russian state media posts so
Okay.
that you're
So,
aware that, where it's coming from and what it is,
okay. Yeah,
with some
because
sort of a color or check mark indicator or some sort of
right.
exclamation point, so
Yeah, it
but it's
definitely.
happening.
Yeah, I mean, guys invading a country, Well, I should
Mhm,
say the country's invading a country, he's
right,
not doing it, but yeah, but hats
and
off to
you wanna know what?
President Zelensky.
I even wanna say, and on that episode you talked about Elon Musk, right?
Mhm.
And so we saw this morning, and I will say this with a caveat because he was actually asked by President Zelensky to throw those Starlink, right,
Yeah.
satellites up there
He
for
yep.
him,
Mhm.
right? But he came out and he did it, right? I
Mhm.
mean, would have kind of fit our narrative more if he would have thought of it on his own, but I mean, but whatever. He was like, all right, we could do this, right? And he
Well,
did it.
yeah, I mean, well, let's talk about the correlation. I mean, we brought up Elon Musk, on
Mhm,
that episode, and he's a transformational leader, right? He's someone that's looking to change the way the world is, right? Or even
mhm,
change actually outside of the world because he's looking at even populating Mars, right? So he's
mhm,
looking at making a transformational change for human beings. And so is President Zelensky in some way. It's for, the Ukraine, but he is looking to make sure that is transformed and it stays as a democracy.
mhm.
So they are very much, in line, both transformational leaders.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe I just I would argue that he's not only becoming a leader of Ukraine, but really showing the world what
Oh,
leadership
absolutely.
is. So
Absolutely.
I mean,
Well,
I thought it was absolutely necessary to
yeah.
talk about that today.
Well, and it's crazy because you look at this and you look at you know, like post, they keep talking about post war, right? Post World War II, which was, the war in Europe, that war in Europe. And I mean, he's really like, there's a lot for the Ukrainian people to be afraid of, right? And
Mhm.
he's really just standing there and they're gonna hold their ground, and they should, and they should.
Yep. And he's target number one, and his family is target number two, and he's there with them.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think we have a lot to learn from this, and I think our leaders, our current leaders across the world, have a lot to learn.
Well, and let's also talk a little bit about how he's used media. Because
Mhm.
we talked about like what if Thomas Jefferson was, like what social media
Yeah.
he would use, right? We joked around about that. But if you look at him, he's using Twitter, he's using basically every platform. And so are the Ukrainian people. They
Mhm.
like
Yep.
as a whole, they are doing a beautiful job to make
Yeah.
sure the message is out there to
Yes.
keep it's a hard time for everyone, right? So they're making sure they're keeping other people inspired, right?
Mhm.
The family, the other people fighting along with them, and they're keeping everyone inspired, and they're also making us feel their story and really see what's happening. And in that, we've all become very empathetic. We want to
Yep.
help, right? And
Right.
and they've done the president as well as the people, the soldiers. I've seen so many videos from soldiers where
Mhm.
they've done a really good job, sort of showing their story. I mean, it was interesting when this first started. I was like, this is going to be really interesting how this is going to pan out with the way social media is. I'm like, this is going to be like our first sort of war going on where social
Mhm.
media is going to play such a big part,
Right.
in it, and it has. And you know, I think they've really used it well to tell their story and
Right.
keep everyone
And to
inspired.
rally people behind them, because let's be
Absolutely.
honest, let's say we don't have the technology we have, right?
Mhm.
So there goes Elon Musk and his satellites, that's gone, right? So then let's also talk about the internet. It is very difficult for us. Let's put ourselves in the radio times, right? To sit around a radio and really feel what's going on if
Mhm.
we're not seeing it. I mean, I've watched the news and there are moms hiding in subway stations live on the news
Well,
with
you're seeing it.
reporters,
Well,
right? So
you're
they're
seeing
in
it
the subway
you're
station
seeing it
taking
from a
reports.
personal perspective. That's what
Mhm.
you're really seeing. You're seeing
Yep.
the person's perspective, and that's really what social media has done. It's taken away this sort of giant group perspective or this narrative, that whoever is telling that story, just their story, and it's given you the personal perspective of the individual, right?
And it's a little
So
bit easier to
so
combat the propaganda, to be
well,
honest with you.
absolutely, because, if you now have whatever, 1,000,000 people posting the same thing, like, I mean, look at how many stories are out there of people that are from Russia saying, like, they don't agree with Putin,
Mhm.
right? We saw, there's a ton of protests going on. So there are a ton of people that, are even saying, like, "Look, we don't agree," and you would have never seen that if it wasn't for social media.
Right,
You would have never seen
right,
those type of
right.
stories getting out there. You know? And same thing, I mean, you're seeing not even just his tweets, right?
Mhm.
President Zelensky's tweets, you're actually seeing him on social media talking. You're
Mhm.
seeing those individuals, whatever, kissing their spouses goodbye because they're going to war, right? You're
Right.
seeing, like you said, the mothers hiding in whatever in the
Yeah.
subways. You're seeing the perspective. I mean,
And they're doing interviews. It's, like,
right.
bizarre. That's what
Well,
technology does for us now,
yeah,
right? I
yeah,
mean,
well, yeah,
I am
some of
in
the
this
people that
subway station in a, a makeshift bomb shelter doing interviews with people in the
right.
US, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, even like the life of the soldiers, right? Like them keeping their morale up, like watching the soldiers, and
Yeah.
then watching other soldiers around the world that support these soldiers, right? Because they know
Mhm.
what they're going through. Is like it's amazing to see the world sort of coming together in
Yeah.
this really, really unique, special way. I mean, it's horrible that it has to be in this situation, right? Is horrible, but it is, they've done a great job at sort of rallying the world behind them.
And let's just, I would almost go out and say that without Zelensky's ability to embrace technology and where we are right now, he would not be stepping into the leadership role and have everybody's support behind him. I mean, by showing everybody what he's doing, I
Mhm.
think it's a perfect, like, it's almost like
Well,
a recipe
so
for a leader to emerge.
right, and let's and also let's I mean, it's sort of like I guess you'd say it's perfect place, perfect time type of
Right.
thing. Like if whether it's serendipitous, I don't know if that's the correct word, but it's he has this he comes from an acting background,
Yeah.
right? He comes right. I mean, what better for that social media presence in order
Mhm.
to have that stage that performance background, right? Or that stage presence or whatever we want to call it here, and that charisma to actually pull people in. And I think that is important.
Ooh, I know we just lost you, Brian, but real quick, I
You
have
got
to
me. I just lost my
say I
camera.
have to say, how we talked about leadership evolving, right? And, like, we have to go with we've gotta kind of evolve the leadership with the times almost, and what a leader is will change as things change. And so I think that what we're seeing is that maybe the next generation of leaders need to have that
Mhm.
ability and some of the skills that we relied on from
Well,
past leaders.
well,
Maybe this is what we need now, a new style of leadership
right.
emerging.
Well, I agree, but I think it's always been there. It's just the level it's been at, right? We talked about I forgot who it was who talked about Thomas Jefferson,
Yeah.
and writing the
Yep,
letters,
yep, yep.
right? And he was just really good at writing letters and
Yeah.
telling his story that way. And that's what started us joking around about whatever his Twitter or whatever the case is, right? But I think it's whatever the tool is or whatever because there are people that are very well recognized via their writing. They may not
Mhm.
have the books, but I
Right.
agree. You need that sort of presence. You need that being able to speak to people
Mhm.
and make them feel that connection, even though they are remote or they're on the other side of social media.
Yeah.
You do need that skill as a current day leader. Absolutely.
So I think we're seeing something emerge right before our
Hmm.
eyes, and it's incredible to watch, and it's scary, and
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking. But
Hmm.
I'm so proud of this man. I don't know him. I'm just so proud of the
Well,
leader
I'm
that
proud.
he
I'm
is,
proud of the
and
Ukrainian people.
I really am. I really
I'm
am.
so proud of how they've all gotten together and they are you know um defending what they see right to defend, and they are they're putting their lives on the line. I mean, god
Yeah,
bless them.
absolutely.
you know, they're in my thoughts and prayers all the time since this has happened.
Absolutely.
You know, so
So again, Ukraine, you are in our thoughts and our prayers,
yes.
and let's just keep rallying behind them in any way we
Hmm.
can. I'm sure there are plenty of ways, and
Absolutely,
let's
absolutely,
just give them any support, even if it's in good vibes and whatever it is that you want
right?
to send.
Yeah, send good vibes, to them. I mean, I've seen so many videos of just people supporting them, and so many, it's so many stories. Like I've seen so many stories of like individuals, right? Like I said, the Ukrainian individuals, the soldiers, telling their story, and then the whole world sort of rallying
Mhm.
behind them. Is
Yeah,
is
and that
crazy.
again is the leadership. I really believe that's the leadership. Without a leader to do that, I think
Mhm.
we encounter a very different scenario. So
Right.
I think the leadership there is just telling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of people watching this live. What are your thoughts on President Zelensky? You think and how he's approaching social? You know,
Yeah, I think
get
the
the world
style of
behind him.
leadership is great. It's wild. I'm excited to see what the next generation of leaders does with this type of
Hmm.
technology. I mean, hey, Elon Musk, let's give you a call and can you
That's
please
right.
send us some, some satellites so we can get some internet? I mean,
Right. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, and here's the thing. You talk about Elon Musk. He's transformational leader. He knows what it takes to get people inspired, right?
Mhm,
So, and look, I mean, I don't know the man, but from what
mhm,
I've seen of him, he is out for the betterment of human
yeah.
beings. And that's the reality. That's one of the reasons why I think he wants to get to Mars, right?
Mhm,
Because it sort of because even if I understand correctly, right? Even like you look at Mars, like basically to my understanding, they're putting together like whatever the doctrine is, where no governing body on Earth will have power, on Mars itself. So what does that say, about how what we've done here to this planet, right?
mhm,
In this situation. And we need more and more good leaders like President Zelensky to get us through these times.
absolutely. All right. Well, that's all we got. And check out that episode on leadership. That is
Yes.
episode 5, I think.
Episode 5, season 4,
Episode
episode
5.
5.
Yes, it aired on Friday. You can check
Oh,
that out on
it's
YouTube or
called
wherever.
it's called Who Made You King, so look
That's
for that one.
mhm.
Well, thank you everyone who joined us live. We appreciate it, and thank you for showing up.